Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy TheMadKaiger, and back here today with another Halo review. Of course, as you know, I've been going through and playing through all of the Halo games through my Chief Collection on Heroic as of late, especially through my mixer. I've been having a bit of fun with it, and last night I finished Halo 3 and started ODST, but I haven't talked about Halo 2 Anniversary yet. And I've got some things I want to say about it. The first thing I want to say about it is that back in the, I think it was 2005, 2006 when Halo 2 came out, I didn't have an original Xbox, so I didn't know a lot about Halo. And my first major experience with Halo was Halo 3. But I do remember a little bit about Halo 2. I remember I did try it out on my Xbox 360 with my older brother at the time. Quite late into the Xbox 360's life cycle. Well, not late, but late, I guess. Obviously, well after the original Xbox was discontinued. And the first thing I want to say is that I actually remember more Halo 2 being more popular and more talked about than Halo 1, Halo Combat Evolved. And I think what it was Halo 2 was really the big Halo game that really put the multiplayer and made Xbox Live such a big thing back in the day. It was one of those early online games that was really well received. And I think it was just because of how great the game was online. I don't really know what made it so great, but I remember it being more popular than Halo Combat Evolved. Now, of course, the version I have played is the Halo 2 Anniversary, which was the remaster of Halo 2. Now, people need to know this. Halo 2 Anniversary was never released physical anywhere. The only way you can get the game is through the Master Chief Collection. There's no way to buy it on its own, and it was never released as a physical single game. It would have been cool if it was for collectors, but again, that was the big selling point of Master Chief Collection with the Halo 2 remastered. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is that when I said about the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary on the Master Chief Collection, the version you are playing is just a port of the Xbox 360 version of the game. However, the Halo 2 Anniversary is a game that was built for the Xbox One and is the only game on the Master Chief Collection that is a Xbox One exclusive, that was made for Xbox One. All the other games were Xbox 360 games ported over. And for that reason, Halo 2 Anniversary is probably the best looking Halo game on the complete Master Chief Collection. Not only did they remaster the graphics in the game like they did for the first one, but they took it a step further and they remastered every single cutscene in the game. And one thing that's really cool, you can actually switch between old graphics and new cutscene graphics. Of course, the old cutscenes were just in-game graphics from the original Halo 2, but the new remastered cutscenes are in a full cinematic experience. They look fantastic, almost movie quality. They look really well done, and they did a good job of remastering the graphic and the sound, because that's something they also did in the Halo 2 Anniversary remaster. Was they actually, not only did they improve on the graphics, but they also changed the sound. Whereas in Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, they didn't really do much to the sound. It was more just a graphical overhaul. Again, you can do the swap in between them, and it's really cool to just see how many different things look and sound differently. One of the biggest sound things my friend pointed out when we were playing it was the Breaking Benjamin Blow Me Away song wasn't actually in the remastered version of the game with the remastered graphics. In that particular mission where Blow Me Away plays, instrumental, not the singing, when you do it in a new style, the new graphics, it's a completely different song. So it's really interesting to see what sort of things they changed about it. The biggest difference between Halo 2, the newest feature, should I say, from Halo 2 and Halo 1 was the ability to dual wield your weapons. So So in Halo 1, you didn't really have too much in the options of weapons, but Halo 2 gave you the option to dual wield weapons. Any one-handed weapon, SMGs, pistols, plasma rifles, anything that was a one-handed weapon, you could dual wield. And I remember this being a really big feature to the Halo, and it did make its way into Halo 3 as well. So it was something that was ported over to some of the later Halo games, and I remember it being a big deal back in the day. You might think, you know, God knows how many first-person shooters have dual wielding, you know, but it was kind of a big deal back in the day. It's not a groundbreaking thing by today's standards, but back in 2005, I think it was quite a big deal. Also, something else worth mentioning, Halo 2 actually has the most missions of any Halo game with 15. Halo Combat Evolved only had 10 missions. Now, here's where I'm getting into the big part. Halo Combat Evolved, I mentioned in my previous video about that. One of the biggest issues I had with Halo Combat Evolved, sorry, I'm just going to say Halo 1 remake. One of the biggest issues I had with the Halo 1 remaster, or the Halo 1 in general, was even though the missions only had 10 missions, a lot of the time I felt like the missions were just repeated and just going in the same place. And the biggest problem I had with that game was the endurance of Halo 1. The fact that you, especially when you get to the Flood, instead of, you know, being, you know, fair, it would just throw hundreds and hundreds of Flood at you at a time, and it just felt like you would get overwhelmed and, you know, going through the same corridor over and over again. Halo 2, on the other hand, went through a much more linear experience, whereas I did mention in the original Halo game, they had a sort of, not an open world aspect to it, but some of the levels you had a bit of freedom to explore, whereas Halo 2 was a much more linear experience. Now, some people like that, some people don't. I personally think it works pretty well and helps give the game, you know, a bit of a sense of direction. A lot of old first-person shooters and a lot of old games in general had this whole experimental phase of not really knowing where to go and stuff like that. And obviously linear first-person shooters are much more mainstream today, just because it, you know, people get lost and stuff, and sometimes it can be a bit of a... Yeah, so sometimes you can get lost and you sort of feel a little bit stupid. But Halo 2, on the other hand, doesn't do that. It's a much more linear experience. And I personally really enjoyed Halo 2. Now, here's the biggest part that I want to talk about. Halo 1, I already mentioned how hard it can get sometimes, where it just throws enemy after enemy on you. And the biggest problem with that was, I don't think Halo 1 really did too much in changing what enemies spawn. I think it was just on harder difficulties, it just improves how much damage an enemy can take, or sometimes it might spawn in more enemies. Halo 2, on the other hand, and I think the later Halo games also did this as well, it put in a really, really awesome difficulty system. Basically, instead of throwing in more and more enemies, what they would do is they would change what type of enemies would spawn on a harder difficulty. So, for example, if you were playing on easy or normal, for example, and there were jackals, for example, sometimes they would only have plasma pistols or carbines. Whereas if you're playing on hard or legendary, heroic or legendary, they'll spawn in with beam rifles, and there might be more jackals. Or, for example, there might be more brute chieftains, or more brutes with the brute shots. You know, tougher enemies instead of just throwing more enemies. And I think that makes the game much more fair. Instead of, you know, throwing more enemies at you on harder difficulty, just change what type of enemies you can spawn in, because it makes the game a lot more easier to progress, but also much more challenging but fair. And that's the problem I had with Halo Combat Evolved, was at times it weren't like it was unfair, it was just a bit obnoxious at times. Halo 2 doesn't feel like that, but I do want to mention Halo 2 is a pretty difficult game on on heroic. It is possible, I did do it, but on legendary you are going to have a really tough time. The biggest problem I had was the brutes, and let me tell you about the brutes in Halo 2. The Halo 2 brutes are no joke. Trust me, when they go into Berserk mode, which is when they go crazy and they take all their armor off and run at you like apes and try to hit you, they just take so much damage. The biggest mission I had a problem with was the high charity mission, and the fact that you had no human weapons whatsoever. It was all plasma based weapons, and you know, brutes can take a lot of punishment. That was changed in Halo 3, and we'll get onto that when we do Halo 3's review, but it is a much more challenging game. The enemies are definitely tougher. It is possible, it's not impossible, but be aware that they are much tougher, and sometimes people do feel, you might get a bit raged, you know, thinking, oh my god, how many shots, you know, I put a full clip of carbine ammo into this guy's head and he still didn't die. It's no joke. This game is pretty tough, and the tougher enemies are tough. And I suppose that's what you get when you play on hard, isn't it? Overall, I did enjoy Halo 2 Anniversary. I thought like they did a great job improving the graphics and the sound, of course. It looks and plays fantastically, runs smoothly, of course. Obviously, a few connection issues here and there, but then again, what do you expect? I enjoyed Halo 2 Anniversary. I thought it was a well-polished game. Of course, the multiplayer was really big, and the multiplayer is thrown into the Halo Master Chief Collection's online multiplayer modes. But I haven't really played too much Halo 2 multiplayer. But it still is a great game. It was a great game. It still holds up today. Whether you're playing the original or the remake, it still is a great game to the Halo series. It was the one that really sort of pushed it further. The biggest, another thing that I forgot to mention in Halo 2 is that it's also split. Sometimes you play as Master Chief, sometimes you play as the Arbiter, which I thought was really cool, being able to play as the Arbiter. And when you play as the Arbiter, you get a special ability to cloak yourself, which is kind of what elites are known for, the cloaking. And yeah, I thought that was a really cool just Easter egg thrown in there. Well, not an Easter egg, but a really cool little thing they did with the game. I thought it was a really polished mechanic, and it really sort of don't change the game up too much, but it's nice to sort of see a different perspective on the Halo series, you know, not just the human perspective, but also what was going on with the Elite, because the whole story of Halo 2 is the changing of the guard, so to say, where the Covenant have basically said, you know what, we're not having the Elites anymore, the brutes are taking over. And stuff like that. So play the games, you'll see the story. The story is pretty good in Halo 2. It was definitely probably one of the best looking Halo games you'll ever play. And I think it's also Xbox One X enhanced, so if you have an Xbox One X and a 4K TV, it will look even better, of course. Another thing I do want to mention before finishing it off, for wrapping it up, was the Flood. The biggest problem I had with the Flood in Halo Combat Evolved was the fact that they weren't hard to kill, there was just too many of them. In Halo 2, they really toned down on how many Floods spawn, but they are, again, kind of like the brutes. They're not too they're not like too overwhelming, they're just quite tough. You know, the Flood can kill you in like 1 or 2 hits if they melee you. And yeah, the meleeing in Halo 2 is unbelievable. The amount of times me and my friend would get killed by an elite or a brute hitting us at the same time with a melee attack, it's unbelievable. But overall, I think Halo 2 is a tough game. If you're playing on one of the harder difficulties, it's probably the hardest of the Halo games, I'd say, to beat on Legendary. I think maybe with the exception of maybe ODST, but ODST isn't too tough if you know what you're doing. But overall, Halo 2 was a great game. I enjoyed it. I had a bit of rage moments here and there. But overall, it was a great experience. If I was to give a Halo 2 Anniversary a rating, I'd probably give it maybe an 8.5. It was a really good game. There's not too many flaws with it. There are a couple of little annoying things here and there. Like I said, some of the enemies just feel like bullet sponges at times, especially the brutes. But again, it all depends on what version you're playing. But the improvements of the spawning of enemies was a big improvement. Instead of just having hundreds of enemies spawn at once, or you know, more enemies, you just tone down on how many enemies spawn and just increase their damage or what version of that enemy will spawn. You know, like I said, instead of a normal white elite spawning, it might spawn in an elite honor guard or a gold elite or something, you know, or a brute captain or something like that. It just makes the game a little bit more fair but challenging, and that's what games need to do. And I think that sort of difficulty was really what Halo 2 did right. I don't know if they did that in the original Halo 2, but they definitely did it in the remastered version. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Feel free to leave a like if you did, and of course, comment below. Let me know what your favourite Halo is. Have you played Halo 2 Anniversary? What did you think of it? Of course, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already and join the family. Hopefully, we should be able to still upload videos. I have been made aware that a lot of videos now on YouTube will be playing in standard definition because of what's going on, but I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see. But be aware, if I'm not uploading as frequently, it's because obviously the way things are with internet and stuff at the moment, having some connection issues with Xbox here and there as well. So I'm hoping that we don't come into too many issues tonight. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Mixer at TheMadKaiger. If I am mixering tonight, I might be going on Overwatch tonight instead of Halo 3 ODST. We'll see what my friend says. I want to sort of change it up and play a bit of Overwatch, but the way things are at the moment, who knows what will happen. Anyway, guys, as always, have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye.